Imagine a place where your employer owns the home you sleep in, the store where you buy milk, and the government policing your streets. This was the American company town. These were entire communities built and managed from the ground up by a single corporate enterprise. As the nation industrialized, this model became standard for coal, steel, and lumber, industries requiring thousands of workers in places where no cities existed. The blueprint emerged early in the textile mills of New England. These massive brick complexes, like the ones in Lowell, Massachusetts, were more than workplaces. They were the centers of gravity for the thousands of laborers living along the river. These were engineered corporate ecosystems designed to house, sustain, and closely monitor a massive labor force. Building these towns was rarely a choice made for the sake of social planning. It was driven by geography. The nation's most valuable raw materials were often located in remote, unpopulated wilderness. With no existing infrastructure to support a workforce, companies had to build housing, roads, and utilities themselves just to begin extracting the resources. The steel industry provides a clear example. To supply coastal blast furnaces, corporations erected massive, isolated operations like this U.S. steel plant in Gary, Indiana, which dictated the entire layout of the surrounding land. The company town was a response to raw economic necessity. Corporations needed workers in the wilderness, so they brought the city to the work. Quality of life in these borders varied depending on the industry and the founder's goals. In Hershey, Pennsylvania, Milton Hershey practiced welfare capitalism, providing workers with manicured parks, libraries, and high-quality amenities to cultivate loyalty. But in remote resource extraction hubs, like the coal camps of Appalachia, the environment was strictly utilitarian. Workers and their families lived in cramped wooden houses clinging to the mountainside. The economic heart of these communities was the company store. In isolated areas, this building held a total retail monopoly, controlling the supply of food, clothing, and daily necessities. Employers paid workers in scrip, an internal currency valid only at the company store. Because the company set wages, rent, and prices, they engineered a cycle of debt. Earning less than living costs forced workers to buy on credit, locking them in permanent debt. Whether an employer offered a pristine park or a drafty shack, the underlying structure tied the worker directly to the company's ledger. This concentrated power gave the employer absolute leverage. Losing your job didn't just mean a lost paycheck, it meant immediate eviction and the loss of your family's food supply. This imbalance often led to deteriorating conditions and friction, fueling the early rise of labor unions. George Pullman provided a high-profile case study for this friction in his railcar factory town in Illinois. During the Panic of 1893, Pullman cut worker wages by 25% to maintain company profits, but he refused to lower the rent on the company-owned houses. The resulting 1894 Pullman strike paralyzed the nation's railroads. The standoff turned violent when federal troops intervened to protect the company's interests and clear the lines. Pullman's failure demonstrated the limit of corporate paternalism. In an economic crisis, total corporate control easily became economic tyranny. The system eventually fractured under the weight of new technology. The mass production of the automobile destroyed the geographic isolation that made company towns viable. Workers now had the mobility to live in independent towns and commute to the factory. They could spend their wages at competing stores, breaking the company's retail monopoly. The final blow came through federal intervention. During the 1930s, the New Deal rewrote the legal relationship between employers and laborers. Federal legislation like the Wagner Act protected the right to unionize and collective bargaining, outlining the coercive practices that sustained the company town. The company town could only survive in isolation. Once workers gained physical mobility and legal rights, the corporate monopoly over their lives collapsed. As domestic industries like coal and steel later buckled under globalization and mechanization, corporations simply abandoned the towns they had built. They left behind a vast physical legacy. Across regions like Appalachia, once thriving industrial centers turned into ghost towns as the corporate life support was pulled away. Today, nature is reclaiming the massive structures that once powered the American economy, reducing whole towns to rusted monuments on the mountainside. Echoes of the original blueprint still exist today. Modern tech campuses often offer comprehensive amenities, free transit, meals, and housing initiatives designed to keep employees comfortable and on site. Modern workers possess the mobility and the rights their predecessors fought for, but the ruins of the company town stand as a permanent caution, a reminder of what happens when one entity controls both your livelihood and your life.